Mental health is not just the absence of a mental illness.
We are all vulnerable to this crisis. Oof, we got to stop. You have to say that again.
This expression of what you got or didn't get or got too much of or not enough of expresses in every single relationship that you'll ever have.
When one of us in a family works to reset our nervous system or to heal trauma, it indirectly impacts the nervous system and the DNA of our other related family members.
We have it all in us. It's in us. We're not using it.
Welcome to Whole Plus. My next guest, Sophie Grégoire Trudeau, is such a treat. I can't wait for you guys to listen to this conversation. She is a best-selling author, a celebrated public speaker, and a passionate mental health advocate. Her first book, Closer Together, Knowing Ourselves and Loving Each Other, was a #1 bestseller in Canada and #1 on Audible. She explores the science behind brain health, talks to us today about emotional literacy and intelligence, and what leadership really means. Sophie, welcome to Whole Plus.
Thank you.
It's such an honor and such a privilege to have you here. I've been stalking you. I've seen all the amazing work you've done. It's incredible. We'll go into all of that shortly, but I want to get right into it. Your book, Closer Together, Knowing Ourselves and Loving Each Other, was a #1 bestseller, #1 on Audible. In that book,
In Canada.
Hey, it counts. It all counts.
You gotta be humble in life. You gotta be humble. But yes,
no,
yes.
but I want to actually quote you. These are your words, and it just resonated with me so deeply. And I want to talk about these words. So you write, as your emotional biography sets the musical scale of your life, your unwounded soul writes the final symphony.
Ultimate symphony.
What ultimate symphony? What did you mean when you were writing those words? What were you trying to say?
We don't know this because we're not taught this. But we come into the world pretty much perfect. We'll set aside, babies with malformations or, deficiencies from a neurological perspective. But we come into the world where, of course, the in utero experience when we were in the womb of our mothers, if we went under stress into the womb, we do come out with a tone in our nervous system that could mean that there is a little music in there that might not sound so good to us because it didn't feel safe in the womb, right? Our nervous system were a little bit jacked up and in alert mode. So apart from the in utero life where you can come and be birthed into the world, you're perfect, right? If you were under difficult circumstances when you were in the womb, yes, you do come up with some little tweaks that could be soothed by proper care, nurturance, stable presence from your parent. And, that quality and that quantity can really relax your nervous system and, again, rewire some, neurons in your brain to make you feel safe, validated, cared for, and seen. So when that is done in a secure way, we'll just classify it in the two big families of secure or insecure, bonds of attachment to the person who took care of us, whether it's a mother, an auntie, an uncle, whatever. Anyone. When that takes place in a secure environment, you have more chances of feeling at ease in the world, of trusting others, of trusting yourself, of knowing that you are worth being here. And everybody comes into this world with that same worth and should be treated with kindness and love and compassion. But that's not the case. So when I wrote this book, I realized that in that quote, when I talk about the fact that your emotional biography is what you come into the world with. But even if you went through the most brutal circumstances and events, you can still rewire your brain and your nervous system. And your soul is untouched. Your body might be, right, from abuse or from even from verbal abuse, your body answers that and is under stress. But it is really important to note that the neuroplasticity, and that's been a buzzword we've been talking about for years.
Right.
Our brains can relearn, we can build more resilience in our bodies, and we'll go maybe deeper into that, into mitochondrial resilience and all of that. It is fascinating how we can affect our bodies and our brains and our minds, and therefore our emotions and our thoughts, because you can never outthink your way out of stress.
Yes.
It doesn't
Thank
work.
you. Yes.
No, talk therapy is great. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I've done
Right.
it too, but it's not enough.
Right.
And so your soul always remains perfect and untouched and beautiful. And people have to know that they are worth the beauty of their own soul.
I feel like so much of what I see people struggle with is such an attempt to fully express their soul and their soul's desire, and they
Yes.
struggle with that. Chinese medicine, which I've spent a lot of time in, 5,000 years ago, they talked about this concept of qi
Yes.
or energy,
Yes.
right? And you were gifted a certain amount of energy, and then you could replenish it and grow it, or you could deplete it depending on what happened throughout your life. So I love seeing this come full circle, right? That's a big part of my mission of Whole Plus, is to bring all this together. Now, when we are wounded through life, let's say we didn't get the nurturing, we didn't get the attention we need.
Yeah.
What are we seeing play out? Is this what you think might be happening when we think about this mental health crisis that's global now? It's not US, it's not Canada, it's global,
I have chills.
Tell me what you think is happening here.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not what I think is happening. Is that I've been doing, I'm a student of life just like you are.
Right.
And I keep track of what science and facts and data is showing us. And that even in our days is under danger. And
Right.
it's, we're toying with the truth.
Right.
And that's very, very dangerous for a democracy, for human beings, for families.
Going through it right now.
Right?
Right.
Exactly. So I think that mental health, mental wealth is not just the absence of a mental illness.
Right.
We're all one trauma away from each other. I've been saying this for 20 years. And people are like, what do you mean? What? It takes one traumatic life event to change your brain and the way you interact with yourself and other people. That homeless person, something happened to them.
Yeah.
You're not born homeless.
Right.
Well, yes, in some countries you are, but you know what I mean. So it's not just the absence of mental illness. And I think mental health is a right. It's a right to self-knowledge. It's a right to knowing how to regulate your own human body, because you have one in this lifetime. And what's happening now is that we are actually, ADHD, ADD, autoimmune diseases, we're skyrocketing in all the dis-ease that we're going through as a population. And we come into the world with the two most basic needs. And this is true for every single human being that comes on this planet. Attachment. So we talked about it. Did your attachment to your caregiver, whether it was in a secure or insecure environment, take place? And how did it take place? And how did it affect you? So that need for attachment, just to feel loved and validated, is the first need. It's biological, it's visceral. And then the second one is authenticity. Being able to express who you are without having to change your behavior to please. But come on, between you and I,
Right.
Dr. Taz, we all do it.
We all
okay?
change our behavior.
We all do it. We all do it. But,
Right.
but today we live in a society that rewards us for doing it.
Mm.
We live in a world where we are rewarded and praised in different ways, physically, anti-aging, surgeries, and psychologically, showing your perfect side all the time, right? So we're being rewarded for self-betrayal. And Dr. Gabor Mate, who is an ally
Incredible,
on this path, and who helped me, says it so well. If you can't express who you truly are, when all systems have been tried, your fight, your flight, your freeze, nothing works, because you're living in abnormal circumstances, because the way we compete in this market to succeed, we want to be recognized instead of contributing to the world. We are competing constantly against one another. We are not accepting aging. We're obsessed with eternal youth. All of our energy is geared towards things that are not authentic. Therefore, we become what we consume, whether it's people, food, which our food, that's another topic on its own.
That's a whole hour.
Right?
Right.
So that's also
Right.
a big problem, because if we don't get the right nutrients to nourish our gut and our brain, which is a relationship that can never be dissociated. And now we see health as a holistic approach, where the brain in your head, the brain in your heart that has a sensory capacity.
All communicating.
Exactly. And in your gut. So all the signals, 75% of the signals from your gut go to your brain. We were thinking before that it was more the brain to the gut. That's not true. So I think mental health in this case means two things. One, the way we live is abnormal. We are reacting in our bodies and in our minds to abnormal circumstances. We are not meant as human beings to be sitting in front of
Computer,
office desk
yeah,
and computer it has so many different negative impacts. And then the way we lost community. We're out there alone in the world. We got to fend for ourselves. When you're taught from a very young age that you want to be recognized and you're a self-made woman or a self-made man, that doesn't exist. Nobody is self-made.
Right?
No one. That is a pure lie. We're here, everybody you meet, whether it was positive or negative, it forms you. It leaves an imprint in you. You decide to deal with it with strength and courage, or you decide to be overwhelmed by it. Now, the problem is, we're on dopamine highs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So dopamine makes you feel like you're kind of high, right? And it's perfect. It gears you towards action, and we need it. But we're constantly looking for that next high. What relationship? What type of food? What type of movie? Whether it's violence or horror or whatever. What's my next high?
Right.
So right now, teenagers who are the next generations and children, because they're always on screens and always constantly being probed with and stimulated with incentive reward, lights that are never stop blinking, they find the relaxing hormones very boring.
Mm-hmm.
Though that serotonin, that oxytocin, all the relaxing hormones that are meant to bring us back home to ourselves. We don't think we're worthy of rest, but the only way the body and mind make sense of life is through rest. So it's quite a pickle we're in, but it's not, everything is explainable. If you have enough knowledge to see why there is this type of human behavior, why there is divisiveness and polarization between human beings, it's not that difficult to understand.
When I listen to you, I see such a connection between the unwounded soul, right? And then attachment issues being present in the culture of today, and then sort of this precipice of developing a mental health crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we are all across race, socioeconomic status, country, party, it doesn't matter, vulnerable to this crisis because of the culture that you have just described, And I think that one of the things, the issue of the times and the challenge of the times, whether we're talking about our youth, our teenagers, women, men, family units, and I know we're going to get into all of that in just a minute, is how do we unwind this? I mean, you have been a tireless advocate for mental health throughout Canada and across the globe. What, for somebody listening to us right now and understanding that they have fallen, either they individually or their family has fallen right into this pit of mental health issues, which we probably need to tease apart a little bit more anyways, what would you tell them? Where do you start? Where do you begin? How do you have these conversations? And some of this is personal for me, and I'll share that with you.
Yeah, I have chills right now because I suffered from eating disorders. I've seen people who have been suffering in their own lives, through the years. And for me, I love humans and I believe in our potential. And I will never put my hands down and arms down thinking, okay, it's over. The darker forces are going to take over.
No.
There's not a chance. Not in my lifetime.
I'm
until
there
my
with
last
you.
breath.
Yep.
And I know you're the same.
I'm there with you.
So
come on, people.
yes,
Come on.
we love you. But here's the thing.
Right.
I think it's two answers to this question. The first one is, it comes from, it's neurobiology. It's science, but it's simple. Safety.
Ooh.
And there are so many people who don't feel safe in their own family units, in their workplaces, in their work, in their schools, shootings. Just think about everything that's happening.
Oh, yeah.
If the human beings don't have emotional safety, the famous Abraham Maslow pyramid where you got a food on your table, a roof over your head. If emotional safety is not there, physical and emotional safety, it's game over. You don't have anything. Your system will not be able to move forward without emotional and physical safety. So if we get to make the threads of community a little bit more solid, and if we use techniques, which are not that difficult to integrate into schools, into families, I teach it, right?
Yeah.
Just how to reset your nervous system, breathing exercises, yoga, walks in nature. We have it all in us. It's in us. We're not using it. And it's not our fault. It's nobody's fault. We haven't been taught. How are we supposed to know about this?
Why in the world do we? Okay, so when you say the word safety, I'm latching.
So safety first.
Safety first. And I know for the person watching or listening, they're thinking like, I am safe. I have a house. I have a car. I have a great life.
I love that.
What do you mean I'm not safe?
Right.
But you're talking about emotional safety.
Yes.
Explain that.
Okay, so you could be living in a, 22 bedroom home, but you're stressed out all the time. You're depleted. You're trying to hold everything together for your kids, for your husband, for your family, or you lost your family, or you're going through a divorce. There are so many external elements that can make us feel unsafe emotionally. And we don't know this. But when we feel stressed out all the time, which is most people, it affects our sleep. It affects our energy levels. And when sleep is affected, our emotional resilience is affected. We don't feel as we can conquer ourselves and the world with as much, positivity and grit and strength. So our bodies are meant to be tested. We're meant to activate ourselves so we can encounter obstacles in order to know what we're made of. But we're not talking about the obstacles that we just referred to, like constant stress at work, not being able to pay for your rent at the end of the month. Whether you are living in a 22-bedroom home or in a tent, if you feel safe in that tent and your needs are met, but you don't feel safe in that 22-bedroom house, well, it is what it is. You won't be able to just
I love this.
Not be stressed. It has nothing to do with this, right? So safety is just like trauma, or like I would say, safety is not just the absence of threat, but it's the presence of connection.
Ooh, we got to stop.
And this is Gabor Mate again.
You have to say that again.
Okay, so safety is, I have chills again, is not just the absence of threat. It is the presence of connection.
And I think that is what we are all missing nowadays.
Exactly.
And that is why we have a mental health crisis.
So the second element, the first one was safety, and you said it in your question. You didn't.
I didn't catch myself.
No. But it's perfect. You said vulnerable. Vulnerability. So if you look right now at all the leaders in the world, I'm not going to name any names, but just think, okay? It doesn't matter which political party you're from. I want you to just think here. So people who adhere to, let's say, extreme, extremism, or really right or really left-wing ideologies, or, conspiracy theories. So they are looking right now, or fascism. There was a recent study, and I think it's Gabor Mate actually who wrote the article in The Guardian. And they went into the brains of people who are attracted by these movements. And the amygdala, which is the almond-shaped kind of space in your brain that gives you signals for danger, okay? It's good when there's a car crossing across the street and you don't want to be hit by the car. The amygdala will go bing, 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 be careful, don't cross the street. Perfect, right? But when, usually in your childhood years, when you went through trauma, when you went through neglect, when you went through all the things that should have taken place that didn't, right? Because trauma is not just something bad that happened to you. It's also something that should have taken place, just like safety, but that didn't.
Right.
That's trauma. So when you've had this in your childhood, most people who have gone through trauma will not have the same sense of safety and trust in others and in the world. The more fragile you are, the less trustworthy you are of others, and the more threatened you are by their difference. Think about the movements of populations right now and the politics. I'll continue. Now, people who have had difficult childhoods, and this is not their fault. I'm saying this with compassion.
So you're connecting,
not finger pointing.
You are connecting this mental health issue, this lack of emotional safety. This is fascinating, guys. You're connecting this lack of emotional safety to what we're seeing play out at a macro level across the world today with extremism.
There's no doubt about it.
Fascism, all these ideologies.
There's no doubt about it.
Wow.
If you take examples like, and this is not me, I'm not doing this correlation.
Right.
Science and researchers.
And the researchers.
Yes, and I'm just a student, and I love making this accessible to people because I didn't know this 10 years ago. It's time for us to really look at the truth, but it's not convenient and it hurts.
Right. And it's hard.
Yeah. But we can do it. We can really do it. So the vulnerability part, I'm going to it now, is that people who for example, who are committing atrocities. In my book, Closer Together, I talk with David Livingstone Smith, who's an expert on dehumanization.
Right.
And he says, Sophie, it's not because I have, I want to excuse their gestures of committing just atrocious
Horrific
acts.
crimes, right.
But there is an underlying need for connection. Hatred actually stems from an underlying need from connection that never happened.
Wow.
Yes.
Powerful.
It's beyond powerful, because it means that it is not impossible, we'll push all the extreme cases aside here.
Right.
But, I remember reading even in the article about Hitler and how he had an incredibly difficult, traumatic, and abusive childhood. And there are other leaders right now in this world who have gone through very difficult childhoods with, father figures that were not nourishing,
right,
or stabilizing or validating. And what happens is that these people who feel attracted to these movements, they're trying to get away from the vulnerability of the child, because they were vulnerable and they almost died from it because nobody paid attention. So they try to get away from vulnerability, and they're looking for a father figure to feel protected. They want to get away from weakness and come closer to power, but in a way that is not healthy.
It's almost like the false prophet, right?
Yes.
That's what that
and
sounds like.
And they don't want to take responsibility because they have low self-esteem, and they don't feel they have the capacity to regulate themselves.
Now so that is so clear with what's happening in the world. We could talk about that all the time, but let's bring it back to the family.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back to our kids.
Yeah.
And I will say one more thing about leadership in general, and it's just a personal journey too, as I've built my companies. And, nobody should be in leadership, whether it's leadership of a country, a company, or a family, if you have not done a certain amount of due diligence around your own emotional kind of guardrails, barriers, blind spots, and are you yourself emotionally safe? I have had to go through my own personal journey of walking through those doors to make sure I was treating not just my family, but my team the right way, and building them and growing them and nurturing them. So I'm thinking about, the mom listening today, or, the CEO listening today, or even maybe there's somebody who's leading a country listening today. This idea of emotional safety and responsibility, can you tie those together for us? What does that look like? What is our personal sense of responsibility when we're talking about emotional safety? Because if we don't take responsibility, and if we're not accountable, then we're projecting the stuff on the people around us. So curious what you think there.
So as somebody who was on the co-political path with the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, for a long time, I can tell you that what happens when you're a leader is tied to what happens in a family. And you said, should we tie them together? They are tied together, right? I think that everybody's leading a country within their own family.
Yes, absolutely.
And so our responsibility as parents or mentors or guides for younger people is to, or partners in a relationship, is to be able to look at our trauma, small t or big T. Let's say it again. It's not just something really atrocious that happened to you, and unfortunately, that's true for too many people, but it's also something that should have taken place that did not take place. And you are still looking for that. And this expression of what you got or didn't get or got too much of or not enough of expresses in every single relationship that you'll ever have, until you are willing to look at your truth, understand why you have your personality patterns, why you have your defense mechanisms. We all do. We all do. And, we're talking here together and we've done this work, but it's never over. Like, I don't want people to think, these two have done it, so they have everything in control.
No.
Excuse me. I still
journey.
Exactly. Fall flat on my face, will get back up. But I know that I can get back up.
Yeah.
Right? I lost my father, a couple of weeks ago.
That
And I
soon? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I still feel so
sorry.
fragile.
Yeah.
I'm an only child, and it reminds me of so many things. And there was addiction in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I talk about it in the book, in Closer Together, how he was my mentor. And I don't know if when people are listening right now, what kind of relationship they had with their dad or with their mom. But the emotional nourishment that we get in our families is equal to the amount of work that both parents were able to do on their own trauma, because you don't want to leave your, can I say, you know, your crap,
Right.
as
For
a
the next
legacy
generation.
to the
Right.
exactly to your
Right.
children. So one of a great singer that I love, she's Canadian, Serena Ryder. She says, you know, Soph, if you don't take care of your shit, you become full of it.
Yeah, totally.
So
Totally.
it's that simple in a way, but it's not convenient. And it asks of us to go deep and to cry and to be angry and to let go of emotions that have been bottling up in little ways, right? It doesn't have to be in huge ways, but those little ways, they're chronic and they're through the years. So they set in and they make the personality that you have and who you are.
I know you love the science. I'm going to share some of the geekiness that I usually
Let's get geeky.
I usually live in.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it was 2015, 16, I don't remember the year, but I did a TED Talk. And I was fascinated by the research, and the research showing that our thoughts and emotions live actually in our mitochondrial DNA.
Yes.
The mitochondrial DNA gets passed generation to generation, often untouched and unchanged by whoever you mate with. It's maternal DNA primarily. And so the research was suggesting, you know, that a lot of what's happening with us as women, you know, in terms of how we feel and how we think, we are handing down, we are passing down, and we're carrying, not only are we handing down, we're also carrying a few generations of thoughts and emotions with us. And so the premise of that talk was, it's our responsibility. We have to change that narrative, that dialogue, that emotional landscape that we live in. Now, at the time I gave that talk, I think it kind of went over everyone's head. And I remember
You were
people being like, what is she talking
You
about?
are a trailblazer.
Right. But now, like, again, science is catching up to even
That's
those
it.
ideas. We talk about hypothalamic inflammation. That's the area you're talking about in the brain, that we're having this dopamine either overrun or deficit, whichever way you want to look at it. And it's creating low-grade constant trauma, low-grade chronic cortisol, you know.
Inflammation. And what's inflammation? It's disease.
It's disease.
Yeah.
And so it is responsible for the very thing we're talking about today, which is a lot of the mental health stuff that's happening. But how? How do we set about, right? Okay, so we're going to deal with, we came into the world, as you described it so beautifully, with this unwounded soul. And we either had a wonderful nurturing environment or we had one that was not, or somewhere in between. You know,
It's always somewhere in between.
it's always somewhere in between. You know, but how do we, my husband and I, because we'll talk about my daughter in a minute, but we're like, we did everything. Like, you had everything. We gave everything. Why are we dealing with this? You know, but
Oh my
it's
God,
simply
same. We
not
both have
true.
16-year-olds.
Yes.
So we know what we're talking about.
Yes. You know, so 16 and 15, we share that.
Same.
But again, okay, so everyone's in between. Are there steps that we can take? You know, owning our own trauma is one. You mentioned that. Name a couple of other things that are active that we could do if we're going to understand and latch on to this idea of emotional safety, responsibility, and legacy.
That's a huge question. But the answer is a little bit more simple than one might think. So we live too fast, okay? Look at the world. We're spinning. We're spinning. Our heads are spinning. Our bodies are spinning. We're spinning on wheels inside gyms to make ourselves healthy, you know?
Hey, wait a minute. I just did that this morning.
Fine, yes. They play good music. It's okay. It's a party in the morning.
Gotcha, right.
Yeah, that's my kind of thing. So we're spinning, and some of us are spinning out of control. And the language of love is slow. Stress is a dysfunctional.
I feel like that's gold. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to say that again. The language of love is slow.
Can I tell you something? When I wrote the book, Closer Together, I asked my son, he was 14 at that time. And I said, honey, what's the language of love? And he looked at me like, what the heck? Again, my mom's going cuckoo, you know?
Sure.
And he said, I don't know, slow. I'm like, F yeah. We're in the kitchen. And I'm like,
go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Wait, that's not slow.
exactly. But I did say,
Yeah.
hun, you have the recipe to life right in there. slow. My father always used to tell me, hey, tornado, stop running, you're going backwards. I understand it today. So what happens? Stress is a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment, okay? We're going too fast. We can't be present. When we can't be present, we can't truly love. And when we can't truly love, we're actually not living the life that is dedicated, and our right to be humans is true love. So love, it could be romantic, it could be, I don't
Parental,
just mean
all of it.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
To be present, to be in tune with life. I spoke with the head of the Ottawa Hospital for Mental Health, the Royal, George Nordhoff, and he studies neuro waves. And he said, Sophie, in depressed people, the waves are much slower. They feel like the world is passing them by, can't get out of bed. Everything's too fast.
Right.
You're completely out of rhythm with your environment. Your brain is out of rhythm with your environment, and that causes dis-ease.
Mhm.
You know what? Jim Carrey, I remember seeing him say at one point, whatever you think of him, but he did say, he was talking to a specialist, and depressed is also deep rest. Deep rest from the inauthentic people that we are, because we're reacting to inauthentic living circumstances. So we need a rest from wearing those masks of performance, from wearing those masks of depletion, that or that everything's perfect. It's either one or the other.
Right.
So if we learn to slow down in our lives, to take time, to find time, sometimes it's 5 minutes. We spend hours looking at our phones, and we can't breathe for 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. This can't be for real. I met a documentary filmmaker, Black Canadian, Director X, his name is Julian, and he went into the most vulnerable places where there are shootings in schools and in the area in Toronto. And they used mindfulness and meditation to quiet the minds and the trauma of people who actually were saying, I'm trying to save people who are still alive. I'm trying to grieve people who are still alive because they lost their minds to trauma and to chronic stress. And it's working. They're using mindfulness and meditation, and communities coming a little bit closer together. They're doing it in prisons. They're doing it in schools. They're doing it with the police force, and they're seeing incredible results. This is just one program. It's called prefrontal cortex operation, something like that. But this to say that we are all a tiny community in our own family nucleus of family.
Yes.
And because mothers are usually still today more in charge of all the chores, and we hold the emotional load of every family member in our households.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not saying fathers don't. There's incredible men out there. I absolutely adore them. And I've always been advocating on for the rights of boys and men to grow in a better concept of what it means to be a man and masculinity, because it's an insult to their intelligence.
They're
as well.
under just as much duress and stress to wear that mask
Absolutely.
as women are to wear the other. For
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
But we're seeing now that science is showing us that because women put their needs last, and this was seen as, oh, she's such a saint. She puts everybody else first. You do that, you can become sick. Okay? Most women suffer from autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, lupus, MS, so many others, where they're realizing that the women who do not take care of themselves and their own needs live in a denial of what they truly need, and that causes inflammation.
Absolutely.
So,
I see this
there you
day
go.
in and day out.
Exactly.
I've been doing this for 15 years, patient after patient. Women get sick.
Yeah.
They get sick when they try to do it all.
Yeah.
And currently, today, 2024, we are still doing it all.
I know that.
And it hasn't changed for women.
Parental leave is huge. Okay. Yeah. Parental leave and having dads at home for, a longer time when women give birth is absolutely necessary. It changed a lot in Canada. And I have to say that we've had a very progressive government in place for many years now. So, seeing everything through a gender lens is so important. Mm-hmm. But to come back to the family unit and what they can do to change their lives. So it's that wheel of health. And you can't take one element and think that it's going to roll like a Ferrari. Okay.
Right.
So how do you take care of your sleep? You move during the day. Your human body is meant to move. If you don't move during the day, you're going to set into a nervous fatigue. You won't be able to sleep well. Okay. And I'm not talking about perimenopause because I'm right in it and I'm waking up at 3 a.m. and it's driving me.
We'll have to talk about that
nuts.
later.
Exactly. So if you move your body during the day and you sweat even better, you burn toxins. Okay. If you exercise, you sleep better. If you sleep better, your hunger levels are more modulated and regulated, and you don't crave sugar and junk food as much. Then, if you have that, I would say, regulation where you're like, okay, I'm seeing something I feel better, a little bit better now that I slept well. I'm actually going to make better choices in what I'm going to eat for lunch. And you eat your veggies first, your fiber first, and then you go for your protein, and then you go for the starch. Okay. Just so you know, you build kind of like a wall in the gut that really helps you keep the good bacteria, keep the bad bacteria out.
So this starts with you.
It starts with every single habit you have in your life. How you eat will affect how you sleep, will affect your energy level, vice versa. It's all a wheel. And then there's social connections.
Yeah. This is the one that gets missed. So I feel like the wellness industry has exploded, right? Everyone's talking wellness and health and diet and do this and take this and all this other stuff. We don't really talk a lot about connection and the power of connection, which then brings us back to this idea of safety. We don't have those communities anymore, that if your mother was upset and depressed, you could go to your auntie or to your grandmother or to somebody else. You know, that's disappearing. So talk to us about community and its place in this conversation around emotional resilience and safety.
So I don't know if you're aware, or if you're listening right now, if you're aware of the research that has been done in the blue zones throughout the earth. People who live longer and healthier. So there's, of course, nutrition, what they eat and how they exercise, for sure. And, you know, the quality of the water and the air that they breathe and the earth that they grow their food in. But the common denominator is social connection. So we are social beings, right? Isolation is a form of torture in prisons. There's a reason for that, because we're not meant for it at all.
Right.
And the pandemic was a form of neurobiological torture because we couldn't be in contact with other humans. Right now, you're sitting in front of me, okay? And when people are going to hear this, you won't believe this. If you were chronically stressed and in your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight, flight, freeze right now, okay? And I came in and I had a neutral, just like look at my face right now. There's no real expression, right? I'm not smiling or being aggressive with my facial expressions. If you're not feeling well and you're chronically anxious, you could interpret my neutral face as aggressive.
Oh, wow.
So again, social connection is a universal common denominator that unites us all. We all need it. And we regulate ourselves without knowing it. When you smile to a stranger on the street, in the subway, on the bus, in your school, when you trust in others, when you've done work on yourself so you don't feel fragile or threatened by the difference of others, you are connecting in a way that is reducing inflammation in your body and in your brain, that is lowering your stress hormones, that is making you feel like you can lead a life and trust in the universe. And then add to that maybe faith or awe. Awe is an emotion.
We don't talk about awe.
Like AWE.
That word's gone.
So you know what's really cool about awe is that, let's say there was an eclipse not too long ago. Well, maybe in the States you didn't experience it like we did in...
We saw it.
Yeah?
We had it, yeah.
So great battles apparently, thousands and thousands of years ago were stopped in the face of an eclipse because people couldn't believe how Mother Nature was so much stronger than we are and we were and was trying to tell us something. Now, we would be completely ignorant today if we didn't think Mother Nature is talking to us with what we've done to her, right? So awe is a predisposition in humans to believe and to sense, not to think, to sense that there's something greater that unites us. And when somebody has that emotion and goes through this, through faith, through connection with nature, through having seen groups regulate themselves and take care of each other through the power of community and social connection, and being able to lean in with vulnerability and feel safe, it really relaxes your nervous system, first of all. And second of all, apparently when you feel that way, you make more altruistic decisions. So you don't feel like your self-made world and life that you don't owe anything to nobody.
Right.
It's not true.
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
I love
So look
the
again at the
word
state of the
awe.
world, the state of our families, right? How do we treat each other in our own family units? It's important. And I mean, I say this, I had 2 teenagers and a 10-year-old, and there's stress in our family like in every other family. And sometimes I lose patience. But when I breathed before, when I practiced yoga, or when I went for a walk before and called my mind and nervous system, I don't react the same way when my teenager comes down in the kitchen and says, there's nothing to eat, right? Okay.
Or get out of my room.
That's, yeah. Or like you say, hi, honey, whatever.
I know, right?
Eye roll. No more drum rolls.
The eye rolls.
Before it was mommy's coming in drum roll.
Yep. Now it's only the dog. He's happy to see me. That's it.
Exactly.
So.
But again, and that's like a normal developmental phase. And,
Right.
Our children need to feel like they can differentiate from their family and still be loved. So they don't want our cuddles anymore, and they don't want to be so close, and they want to hang out with their friends. But if they know that they're still loved unconditionally, they'll come back. And I say this, and I could almost become teary because I'm going through this right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm there with
and
you.
I miss them, right?
Yeah.
I miss them.
They do come back, and they do. It's so funny. My daughter's 16 as well. And she can go from like, get out of my room, doesn't want to talk to us, to then the phone's ringing 15, 20 times a day. Like, I forgot to tell you this. I forgot to tell you this. So it is a developmental stage.
If she's calling you to tell you, Mom, I forgot to tell you this, you're good.
I know.
You're good, Dr. Taz.
But my feelings get hurt on the days where it's like, get out of my room. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be around you. You're this, you're that, like all that other stuff. But, one of the things that I'm hearing, and it's just a reminder to me personally, and hopefully for everybody else, is that we have to lead our families to a lower cortisol state. I was having this fascinating conversation with this Chinese medicine practitioner, and he said something very interesting. He said, every family has a rhythm. They have a vibration. Some have a higher stress, and he used Chinese medicine language to describe it, but he
rebellious
called it,
chi or not
exactly. You got it. So he said some have like a rebellious chi vibration, some have a low chi vibration, but every family has a vibration. And it's very important for the leaders within a family to be able to identify that vibration and help the members of the family shift in a more slower, positive, lower inflammatory state. And so I find, a lot of what he's saying very comparable to what you're talking about right now in a much more relatable way than talking about qi and yang and all that other stuff. But he also said this. He also said that when one of us in a family works to reset our nervous system or to heal trauma, it indirectly impacts the nervous system and the DNA of our other related family members.
I'm tearing up because it's that visceral and it's that simple. It's complex, but it's simple. It's like saying, life is complicated, but true love is easy.
Yeah.
We've been taught that, true love is so complicated. No.
It's like breathing.
Yeah, exactly. And when we lean in with vulnerability and we know where we move from and we understand our trauma, everything becomes a little bit more simple. And what you just said is so true. And what the doctor shared with you is so true. Because I see it. When I've meditated and I come back to the kids after school, or I pick them up, I know that somehow they feed off of that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people ask, well, what do you tell your children, about, life? And I'm like, well, I tell them a lot of things, but it goes through one ear and goes out the other most of the time.
Right.
It's how I treat myself. Do I love myself? Am I compassionate with myself? You can be the best mom in the world. Are you weighing yourself, every day and talking about your weight and how unhappy you are with your appearance? Or how we treat and love ourselves is a direct impact onto our children.
Well, how did you get there? Because you have a story of your own.
Yeah.
This is not
we all
like,
have a story, right?
This is not like, guys, just do this. This is a hard fought battle on your part. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm an only child. I grew up in nature from like 0 to 5. I was free. Most of my childhood pics are like naked talking to squirrels.
Amazing.
It's the best. It's the best. And so my haven is nature. Like I go back to her to learn everything and to regulate my nervous system too. And then we moved to the city, and my mom in those days, when I talked to her today, said, I think I was a little bit depressed. Your father was gone a lot, at work, and he was driving between town and where we lived in the countryside. And then we moved to the city and everything changed. I made a new group of friends, and I remember it was less quiet than what I knew, right? I sensed it in all my senses.
Mm-hmm.
And there was addiction on both sides of my family in different ways, whether, there was alcoholism and untreated, unlooked trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I was loved. I was loved, and my parents were good people, right? They were just dealing with their own crap because they were never taught how to actually process it.
Right.
So I internalized, as every child does, the tensions in my own family, and I tried to save them. Tried to save my dad from himself, my dad from my mom from right. But that cape should not be worn by any child, and I know very well that millions of children do this.
I wore the same cape, same exact cape. Had to prevent my father from doing something.
It's hard.
I was the parent of the family.
It's hard.
I'm right there with you.
Thank you. And so are, I'm sure, thousands of people listening.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we all have a story, and we're all connected by our stories. That's why we have to share them.
Yes.
Because, to be honest, you can't even imagine the stories I've heard as a mental health advocate. The most abusive, the most neglectful, the most beautiful. And I realized, again, we're all at one trauma away from each other.
Right.
And I think that we have this responsibility that might seem gigantic, but it's not. And what happened to me when I internalized all this tension, there was a constriction. And I was reading, again, Dr. Mate, my friend, not too long ago, who was saying, suffering is part of life. It's fine. We all suffer, right? Everybody knows this. Every day, maybe, in some ways, one form or another. But when your suffering leaves you with the constriction, with something closed inside of you, that's trauma. And there's this beautiful saying that I keep repeating and that I taught at a retreat not too long ago. It says this, I think it's Rainer Maria Rilke, and it's, I want to unfold. Let there be no place or space inside of me kept closed. Because where I am closed, I am false. Don't think that you are your trauma. You're not. Don't think that you are your flaws. You're not. But look deeply enough to know how you can reparent yourself with the most present, compassionate, and patient love.
I love that. I always tell women, treat yourself like your own child. Like you are your own
We're reparenting
child.
Ourselves, not to pinpoint the finger and say,
no,
because of that,
but
that.
Love yourself, feed yourself, make sure you sleep, make sure you, like all the things we as mothers, like constantly have running around in our head for our kids.
But we say this.
Yeah.
And then the 20 things they'll consume during a day will be fake faces, fake breasts, fake hips, fake teeth, fake nails, fake eyelashes, fake everything. Women, please don't be yourselves.
Right.
And worse than that, we've swallowed the pill of saying, oh, I do it for myself. I don't do it for others.
You talk about, you're very candid and honest with your history with eating disorders.
Yes.
We have that history within our home, right? We're actively dealing with that with my daughter, who has come a really long way, and I'm super proud of her. But
I want to hug her right now.
Really long way, but it's a daily journey. It's daily. It's not okay, we're good for a month. It's a day-to-day thing right now. Is that where all this is coming from? Being fake, being traumatized? I mean, as someone who's experienced this, like I have not personally, I've experienced it only one time when I was with a group of girls in medical school. And we had no control, and that's the way we started to manage our stress. But I got out of it very quickly, and realized it was unhealthy. But I haven't experienced it the way the girls of today are experiencing it. And I don't think I've experienced it the way you've experienced it. So
it doesn't matter, right?
I think it's important for us to talk about it, as we're talking about the present culture, emotional safety, leading within our families. I think this is a piece of the puzzle too.
But you said it in your question again. Your questions are very wise. No, it's true. When you say the minute I started managing my stress better, I didn't fall into the eating disorder at medical school. Well, you just said it, right? There was a red flag. You saw it. So, by the way, our intuition as women and as men too is so, so brilliant and deep and visceral and alive, but we've been shutting it down. How many times have you felt it in your heart, you should have done something, but you really didn't follow it because, life.
Yep.
And how did that turn out?
Always the wrong way.
Exactly.
So,
It happens to all of us.
right.
So you said stress management. Today, the stress that girls live with and boys live with, but by the way, social media affects girls.
So much.
Yeah, so much. Yeah, so much. Research is really, the data is showing it now. So here's the thing. When your community is now rewarding you for self-betrayal, okay, the culture that girls consume every day, they're rewarding you for looking and behaving and putting your intuition, your wisdom, your self-compassion aside. Instead of having faith in something greater, you think, if I go out there and I'm not perfect, the tribe will abandon me. Okay? That's your primitive brain. We're not going to change our primitive brain. We are meant to get away from danger and seek comfort. That's what the human brain does. So when you come back from school or when you come back from work and you're a parent or you're a worker and you're tired and you want to go have your beer and numb the pain and the fatigue, or you want to go on social media to see, well, am I making it? What can I find here? Am I going to feel, usually you don't feel better about yourself after you've been on social media,
Right.
depending on what you consume. I make choices today that really correspond to what I want to learn and what I want to share. So it's better now. And I refuse to spend hours on social media. It's just, I don't think it's healthy. I think that it's never too late to take a step back. Jonathan Haidt with The Anxious Generation, and that book is really making waves because we're realizing that phones in school, for example, first of all, the attention
The learning
span is
and the
just,
attention is one
right,
thing.
It disrupts everything.
Right.
It's the great disruptor, but it's also eroding community. Because everybody in their own little silo is doing their own little thing and then
Right.
posting about it. But what community are we building through this? None. And we need it. We needed to feel safe, secure, properly attached, right? And we have to be careful because peers raising peers is fine for a while, but parents should still be raising their kids.
So the eating disorders that we're seeing, would you blame this issue with social media and lack of community and lack of connection and lack of safety, I guess?
So yes, that's all part of it. But eating disorders, like any other form of addiction. And right now, if you're listening, I want you to find yours because we all have micro addictions, okay? Maybe they're not huge, maybe they're micro, but they're there. Whether it's sex, relationships, television, drugs. Work, thank you. Shopping, over-exercising, whatever your micro or magnified addiction is, it all stems from a dysregulated nervous system, which is seeking connection and emotional nourishment. I don't care what your drug of numbness is. Don't look at the addiction, look at the pain. Look at where it hurts. That's where you need to look. So yes, if we're not focusing on building safer communities, on building people that and families that can trust in each other, and that could and who can trust in other families as well, right? And if we continue to build our successes as we are our own self-made women and men and girls and boys, we're not going to help each other heal.
So it's about community.
It is.
And about staying closer together.
No pun intended.
I had to do that. I had to do that.
You know how many times I've done this? Because with the book tour, I didn't choose that title by fluke. When you publish a book, it's hours of like, what the heck am I going to name this book?
Right.
And it was hard work because first of all, titles were taken or whatever.
Right.
And then I was like, what am I doing? What's my life purpose? Why am I here, Sophie? Why am I here? And what am I willing to, I would say almost die for in a way, right? Or to sacrifice for. And it's human closeness. I love humans. I want humans to know what love is.
So I think you've just answered my next question.
Oops.
And I could talk to you forever. I can't believe
Me
we're
too.
out of time.
I'm
This
loving
is
every
crazy.
second
I
of
haven't
this.
even hit half my stuff. Anyhow, I think you've already answered this, but I'm still going to ask it. What makes you whole? You've had a journey, multiple. What makes you whole? What brings you peace? What does that look like? What's next for Sophie?
Vulnerability. I want to remain open. You know, in that quote, let there be no space inside of me kept closed, because where I'm closed, I'm false. Oh, I don't want to be false. I want to be truth. And I'm willing to have pain in order to find my truth. And my truth is not just mine. Right now, with just what we're sharing now, like I can feel the strength of the energy just between us, right?
Yeah, you're making me cry.
No, me too. No, it's just, it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
It's tangible. And we need to have each other's backs and hearts and minds. The future of our democracies, if we have democracies, which is the most perfect of all imperfect systems, right? We know that. It depends on our capacity to get close to ourselves and other human beings. Because if we continue to be threatened by the difference of others, where are we going to go exactly? And how will we be able to even adapt to the changes that we're facing, the crises, unprecedented crises that we're seeing on this planet from a social or environmental point of view? But you know what? There's an old, and of course the indigenous know, right? Of course, they hold that wisdom.
Yes, they hold that wisdom. Yep.
It says, in the end, we will conserve what we love what we understand, and understand what we've been taught.
Powerful.
So what we're talking about now is natural knowledge. It is visceral knowledge. It is scientific knowledge, and it belongs to everyone. It's a right to be able to know how your body works, how your mind works, how your social connection works, and how you can influence it for the rest of your life and for the people around you.
Incredible. I don't even think I can say anything after that.
Yeah, and I think I've had chills for the whole interview.
Oh my goodness. For everybody watching and listening, there's so much here. Slow down, love one another, build community, stay connected. We are all one trauma away from each other. I could go on. I'll probably have to do multiple episodes off this episode to catch all the pearls and all the nuggets that were in here. But for our viewers and listeners, where can they find you? Where can they keep up with you? Where can they find the book? Maybe share that as well.
I'm a little bit excited now because my website, SophieGrégoireTrudeau.com, SophieGrégoireTrudeau.com. You can sign in. I have a newsletter and I put stuff in it that's fun. We forgot to talk about playfulness, but I want people to know that
we ran out of time.
Yeah,
we had so much.
Playfulness and fun is at the core of who we are. When mammals are sick, they stop playing. When humans are sick, we stop playing. We need this. So if you reach out to my website and you sign in for the newsletter, you'll see that there's always a component of fun while we're learning about how to treat ourselves and how to regulate ourselves. And then my book, Closer Together, is available on any platform that you can order from, Amazon, for example, and it will be shipped directly into your doorsteps. And then I'm coming up with a new TV show. I can't talk too much about it right now, and it's going to be for Francophones as we speak. So, most people I'm sure who are listening, so maybe some of them speak French, but there's also, I'm working to bring my book into a docuserie. So Closer Together as a docuserie, and I'm not crossing my fingers anymore. I'm manifesting the gratitude that if this comes together, I'll be able to serve better. So, at 50, finally, I can manifest properly.
No, that's the journey. That's the journey of shedding the mask and really stepping into your authentic self and really finding your soul's purpose and mission. You're an example of that. Thank you so much for taking time out to join me today. It's been such an honor. Thank you again.
All love. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening and watching today's episode of Whole Plus. Be sure to share this episode with your friends and family. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or click the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is that you get your podcast. And don't forget to follow me on all social channels at Dr. Taz MD. Until next time, stay healthy and stay whole.